Hi there, welcome to 3Spoonies. We are your hosts, Claire, Karen, and Joe. This is episode number 32 on accessible communication. Join us as we dive in.
At Grow Radio, we've launched and supported countless podcasts, and we'd love to do the same for you. Just hit record and we'll handle the rest. No editing stress, no technical faff, just a great podcast released exactly when you want. We've helped business owners, coaches, creatives, and community leaders turn their ideas into professional podcasts. Whether you're sharing industry insights, telling incredible stories, or growing your brand, we make the process simple and stress-free. Want to learn more? Our workshops and courses will guide you through everything from planning to promotion. So, if you're ready to bring your podcast to life, let's chat. Message us on social media or reach out to Gary Jones, the founder of Grow Radio. We'd love to help you get started.
I'm Claire from Sparkle's Gift Boutique.
I'm Karen from Pony Pony Pony.
And I'm Jo from Bright Cat Business Solutions.
And together we are 3Spoonies navigating our way through life and business with not enough spoons. So today we have our fabulous guest, Lisa, with us to discuss all things accessible communication. Lisa, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thanks, Claire. So I am a content and communications consultant. Over the years, I've worked in all sides of the communications and marketing mix. And over the last few years, something that I've been working a lot more on is user-centered content design. Part of that being around accessibility, making sure that anything that is written or communicated is actually something that can be read or perceived by everybody. And I think there's an interesting thing. I've seen lots of debates online about the difference between communications and content design. And ultimately, I think there's a lot of crossover because good communications know their audience and user-centered content also knows about user needs. And I think the difference between the two is what's prioritised more, whether it's the communications objective or the user's need that comes first. But ultimately, it's all about knowing who it is that you're communicating with.
So, firstly, for people who are starting out, is there a form of communication that's better for most people to be able to access and understand?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think ultimately, my default answer would be text-based communication. As in, if something is written in plain language, in a clear text format, whether they're using a screen reader or whether they're reading themselves, making it possible. And if something is in text rather than an image-based, it can also be translated. And there again, God, that's a really difficult question to start with, Karen. Why are you like this?
You're a terrible person.
I just hoped it'd get easier from now on.
You start with a difficult one and then you can relax.
That's really, yeah. But yeah, the short answer, I think, is, clear, plain language text is a really good starting point because you can do a lot with that. And that's where I would start.
Okay, yeah, no, that seems logical. And yeah, allowing for screen readers and things like, and like you said, translators, although
I wouldn't have even
those
thought of translators.
Have their quirks, but it can also mean you can book a cheaper holiday if you go to a holiday website for your destination, for instance, and translate it there. That can be quite handy as a money saver sometimes. Just putting that out there, top tip. So for people who are maybe starting completely new, what are some tips you can suggest to make that language clearer? Are there any tools that you can use or any things to look out for, sort of mistakes that beginners often make?
Yeah, so I think one of the challenges is unlearning everything that you learn if you've gone through any kind of formal education. When we go to university or if we've done any kind of course that involves an assessment via an essay, you're rewarded for the length of the words that you use, that you're using the right specific vocabulary in long sentences, and in ways that you're not encouraged to write and get to the point. You're incentivized to write. There's a minimum word count. It's not a maximum. It's always seen as you've got to write, well, at least this much, 10% either way. And I think there's research that shows that even experts prefer to read things in plain language. It's not something, people are busy. Regardless of how many spoons they start out the day with, nobody is ever reading your communication in the perfect situation. They've probably got a lot of things on. They might be trying to switch context. They might be on a device that it's a really sunny day. God, I miss the sun. Nobody's ever reading what you're sending them in the absolute perfect surroundings. So getting to the point, using the language your audience understands, writing in shorter sentences. I know gov.uk guidance says 25 words or less for a sentence. Keeping your clauses simple and front loading your stuff with the most important messaging first as well. You're trying to help people get the information they need to take the next step.
So what you're saying is, because I've always been I weird people out because I won't pretty my words up. I'm very direct. As my mother used to say, why use 10 words when 4 will do? When she was talking about me, and my coach calls me one sentence O'Neill. It's like, so what you're saying is I'm right.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll forgive you for using the word marketing. It makes me twitch.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right. I heard you far too much while doing the marketing level 3.
Yeah, I think it's right about unlearning things, though it actually can be a challenge to say, right, don't put in a semicolon there, make it 2 sentences, take out things you don't need, and maybe buzzwords or things that mean less than they used to and just kind of take up space. Like vibrant used to be a brilliant word. Now every community project is vibrant, like all of them ever. And it's like, oh.
Exactly. And I think a lot of the time we end up, if you write a lot for your work, you end up with certain phrases that you're to structure your words. What I thought was interesting, so I'm writing a book about accessible communications with my co-author Matisse. And something that we talked about a couple of weeks ago is that at the end of each chapter introduction, she says, let's dive in. And I noticed that everyone on here said, let's dive in when we started. And there's these little phrases that we all use, which I think when they're a familiar construct, it can help people. If you're thinking about a website, if you're thinking about something where there's lots of subjects, there's lots of information about a subject, having a familiar structure can help. But then also sometimes those words that we rely on end up becoming kind of wallpaper, or they're taking up space when they don't need to. There's certain words, we're thrilled to announce, we're excited to announce, all of those kind of phrases.
Opportunity.
Exactly. In some ways they can be helpful, and in other ways it gets in the way of getting to your message. And I think you asked about tools, and there's a few tools that I've used in the past. Recently I found actually that the Microsoft Word's built-in editor is really good. If you ask, there's an editor, if you've got the license for it, it gives you a grade out of 100 as a readability grade. It'll highlight when there are more complex sentences. And if you don't have Word, there's a free tool called Hemingway, which is available online, and you copy and paste or write straight into Hemingway. It highlights complex sentences. It shows you where you could use a simpler word or just get rid of some words. And it really helps you become a better writer. And I think there's something about getting to the point and being clear is a real superpower, especially when you think of the state of this. We're bombarded with messages all the time. So what you're trying to do is make sure that your words are the ones that get remembered. So making them clear, it has a bigger impact as well as being more accessible.
Yeah, that's very true. It is easy to misunderstand things, or certainly there's been times I've read things and it's like, I understand every individual word, but the way you've put them together has confounded me. And you know, if you need to read a sentence 3 times, at that point, you've lost me. It's
I do that to Karen a lot. It's like, Karen, make this word better.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, people have mixed views on using AI. Something that I found it can be useful for, which I've said, I was working on a project recently for a client, and one of the things that their product team was using it for was asking for sort of 3 or 4 options for your headline. It's not writing it for you, but actually, if you're really stuck, asking for some options to then use as a starting point can be helpful. A lot of the time, though, generated AI content it doesn't really say anything. It's very good at looking plausible from a distance and providing a structure and providing headings and providing bullets. But again, there's also, you might have seen recently, there's certain words like delve that are seen to be some writers use them all the time, but they're a big flag for this as being written by AI.
I actually used it quite well yesterday. I wrote my newsletter, and I tend to waffle because I write how I speak. So I just popped that in ChatGPT and went, please make this more succinct and make sure I'm getting to the point, and so it reads easy, which it then just tidied everything up, which was lovely. And didn't use evolve at all.
Yeah, and I agree about the ideas. I think it's great for that. And often when with blogs and things, I'll write the title first and then go from there. But I know some people will do the opposite. Will sort of write the content and then go, okay, I need a snappy title. So having these suggestions, even if you scrap most of them and go, right, I'm going to take that bit there and that bit there, can help get your ideas together, really. And
Gets rid of the blank page.
yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? It's horrendous where you've got that empty box and you have to be interesting and insightful, and that's far too much pressure for me, at least.
I've also seen it used. I feel like I'm slightly going off topic here, but one of the other things that it's useful for is saying, well, here's something I've written. What's missing? Or if I was writing this for a potential customer, what objections might they have for it? Or if I was writing this information for this type of person, is there anything that you think they would ask that's missing? It's helpful at providing that kind of alternative viewpoint. But yeah.
An extra brain without having an extra person.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, sometimes a bit of perspective as well, because when you've written something, it will make sense to you because it's come from your head. And it may be you look at it a few weeks later and go, oh, actually, that's not quite what I meant, or that came across a little bit more harshly than I would have intended. And being able to have feedback straight away to say, maybe that was a little offensive, actually. Could you be, 30% less aggressive, for example?
Yeah, I think there's also something, though, that one of the joys when you're working on a project and there is another content designer available, that what we call the 2-eye process. So you've got 2 pairs of eyes that look at the information. All writing can always be improved. It's never perfect. So ideally, you're going to have somebody else who's an experienced content designer who can actually give you that feedback and make some suggestions. And I would obviously also always advocate for getting actual humans to do that response for you. But in the absence of them, when you're working on your own, it can be helpful, I think. Something else that I think when people are starting out, or even experienced people who do communications for a living, making sure that if you're using images that you have a descriptive alt text. So and that's useful if someone's using a screen reader. It's also useful if someone is on a device and if the picture's quite small and they can't read it, or if they're in an area where they haven't got a lot of data, so it's in their email inbox and they don't download the pictures automatically. It's the description that shows up in the absence of the picture being downloaded. And providing that description is something that is really valuable for people, again, that use screen readers, or that they're not able, if someone isn't able to see the picture, it means that the meaning isn't lost.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of alt text, and there are a lot of platforms that will now prompt you if you haven't added alt text to add it, but it winds me up when people use it almost as a list of tags rather than a description of what the intention of the picture was. So, it's an adorable picture of a puppy, or, if it doesn't give you a sense of what's there, if it lists everything that's there and it's like, okay, there's a woman in her 30s and she has blonde mid-length hair and she's wearing a bikini and it's blue and white and it's got stripes and she's wearing flip-flops and there's a picnic blanket, and it's like, that's not the impression that someone who's able to see the picture would get. That's you almost like, when people used to keyword stuff on their websites, it's like, no, that's not what it's for. Bad people. Nope.
I think there's a real art to writing that description as well, because I think I remember doing some training for a client once, and I had 5 minutes notice that a blind colleague was joining, and which I had a slight panic, but it was a face-to-face session and everything in my training was about writing accessible content. And one of the things that I found fascinating is when we got to the alt text and we went through the exercise that was based on the Web AIM guidelines. And I asked his opinion on it, and he said, well, that's okay, but it's not. He actually, as a user, wanted more detail. He wanted a bit more of a description. He wanted a bit more of the context. I appreciate what you're saying there with, like, when people write like a whole essay in there. There are some users that want it, but I think front loading your description. So there's a short description at the front, and depending on the platform, whether it's on a web page or on a social media account, if you've got a brief description to start with, then someone can choose to skip the longer one. If you've got to the point with 10 words, you don't need to write an essay. But there are some people that do want a bit more detail. And I think, like you said, it depends on the intention of the image. You're not wanting to... Most people aren't sitting there because they want to pore over all of the content and every detail in that image. But where the detail is important, front loading it so that the most important stuff's first, I think is helpful.
Yeah, that's true. Then you've got the option either way. That's quite a good way to do it. And again, there could be ones where all the details are important because maybe it's something you want to buy, and to have the option to say, this is this size or this colour or whatever else.
It is now time for Spoonsful of Loveliness, which is lots of great things from our sponsors.
Mad about money. Managing money with ADHD can feel impossible. But Maddie Alexander Grout has been there, done that, and figured out what actually works. Her book, Mad About Money, isn't just about finances. It's about navigating life when you're wired differently. From tackling overwhelm to breaking unhelpful habits, it's packed with practical strategies designed for brains that don't fit the mould. Whether you're late diagnosed or just looking for a way to stop money stress running your life, this book will help you take back control, one small step at a time. Grab your copy today and connect with Maddie on Instagram at Maddie Talks Money for more tips and insights. Are you overwhelmed by the world of social media? At BrightCat, we simplify the process with our flagship Pick and Mix social media package. Designed to fit your unique needs, you choose only the services you need. No fluff, no sky-high prices. Whether it's crafting engaging posts, optimizing videos, scheduling content, or driving engagement, we've got you covered. Each service the same price, available monthly or as a one-off. Let BrightCat be your partner in building a powerful social presence. Ready to make an impact? Let's get started and brighten up your marketing with BrightCat Business Solutions.
I'm back in the room. Marvellous. So do you have any tips for using pictures in your content or in your communications, in your emails, in whatever other setting?
Yeah. So what tips have I got? So I think images can be really valuable. And there's often debate about if an image is decorative, does it need a description? And most of the time when you're using an image, it's not just decorative, it's there to give a vibe, it's there to set the tone, it's there to if there's an if you're using an image, there's probably an intention for it, and if you've got an intention for it, then it needs a description. The decorative image thing started out because online years ago there'd be like a border or something which people don't need to see. It's just kind of a framing of a page. I think one of the things that people often fall into a trap of is putting lots of text in images. So if you, it's not terrible to have some text in an image, but when you're using, if you've got a graphic and there's lots of text on it, when it's shared online, it'll probably be a JPEG and everything is compressed. So the text won't be that clear to someone with perfect eyesight in perfect conditions. If the image is small, again, your information will be lost. It's overcrowded, so it's difficult to read for everybody. And if the text is only available in that image, it means that you have to make sure that text is included in the accompanying post. It's not, I don't think it's enough to just stuff it in your alt text, because not everybody not everybody uses a screen reader who can't read what's in the image. So not everybody will get to that alt text. So I think from a design point of view, making sure that you're not overcrowding your image with text so it's more attractive to read for everybody. Making sure that any important information is also available in text, either as a description with it or in the post.
I always look at it as it's there to enhance your message. It's not to replace it, as it were.
Exactly. I think the meaning just gets lost if that's the only place to find the text. Again, back to translations. It can't be translated by existing built-in translations. If you're still using Facebook, for example, if the only information on that post is in the picture, then the built-in translation won't work. But yeah, I think, and also the other thing to watch with text and images is the colour contrast.
Mm-hmm.
It's really tempting sometimes to use a really attractive seeming colour palette, but actually you're making your content harder to read. And I think it's not online, but my favourite example of this is, I don't know if you've been to a restaurant recently, but if you go in person to a restaurant, or if you're reading a book to a kid, or if you go out, like, you're probably in low light conditions already. And the restaurants that use the fancy italic fonts, so they're harder to read to start with, and it's sort of a light brown text on a cream paper, just impossible to read. And, I've spoken to people before about this, say, but Lisa, there's a vibe here. This is part of our palette. We want to give this kind of impression. But the vibe in a restaurant is completely ruined when people get their phone out and put torch on to be able to read the menu. Like, I've been in that situation recently, and, people start tatting. It's like, think about your audience and how they're going to be actually using this information. So yeah, it's making sure that you've got a good contrast. Pure black on pure white, or pure white on pure black, can be hard to read as well, but white on just off black and vice versa is the easiest to read. But you can get a really nice contrast whilst it's still being attractive. And tools like Canva, if you're using that for your designs, there is an accessibility checker in it. So you can go into Canva, go to the accessibility checker, and it will tell you if your contrast is off or not. So because 1 in 12 men is colourblind, which is quite a high number. It's one of those weird things that affects, I think it's 1 in 200 women and 1 in 12 men are colourblind. So if you're relying on something that's got like a red-green contrast, some people will just see it all as brown and they won't read it. So something else I like to do, and this is if you're doing PowerPoint presentations and you've got graphs, if you only rely on colour to differentiate between the bars or between the sections, it's really hard to read that, especially if someone's then printing it off in their black and white printer. So looking at colour contrast, looking at how much information is there, making sure that you've got clear labels on things, and providing an alternative format where needed, I think helps there too.
Yeah, that's all really worth knowing. And I'm sure there'll be lots of people out there that didn't know about the accessibility checker on Canva. And it's like, oh, handy. So thanks for that. If nothing else, that's really good. The
There's
other
also
stuff's good
that
as
in
well,
Word, by
but,
the way.
Mm.
PowerPoint has it, Word has it. A lot of, you can add alt text to your images on Instagram. It's fiddly because you've got to go through advanced options, accessibility, but you can add your descriptions on Instagram. If you're still using the artist formerly known as Twitter, there's a way to turn it on so you can't post a picture until you've put your alt text in. Blue Sky lets you put alt text. I've got my settings so Blue Sky won't let me post a picture without the alt text. There are normally settings that you can switch to help you remember, because it's sometimes hard to remember. When you've got lots of things you need to post, you want to get it all done. But there's a consultant called Alexa Heinrich who did a post a while ago, and she said, if alt text and providing those accessibility features, it's not extra work, it just means that your work wasn't finished without it. I'm paraphrasing.
I like that.
I like
Yeah.
that. That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's something you may not think about, but would you consciously choose to produce something that a high percentage of people can't access in any way? Probably wouldn't. But yeah, I think it's knowing what's out there and also being aware. Are there sort of any common mistakes that people often make?
Yeah, I think, something that, whether it's in your email or on a web page, making sure that your hyperlinks have got that aren't click here isn't an accessible way of writing a hyperlink. You need to include information bearing words where possible. It shouldn't be a surprise what click here does. And if you're reading through a paragraph of text and it says click here, you need to have read the entire paragraph to then know what click here means. And if someone's using a screen reader, depending on their settings, it might be that the reader reads out all of the content and then reads out all of the links. And if all the links just say click here, you get a list of click here's. So trying to make sure that you've got like an action word, or, it's really, download the report or register now. It's actually trying to get those action words into your link text so that people know what clicking on the link will do. I had an example a while ago where somebody had sent me an email and they were inviting me to join them for they were writing a book as well. They were inviting me to their book launch. And I read the email and I was like, oh, fantastic, sign me up. How do I do it? It's like, Lisa, I put the links in the email. But I read the email on my phone and the links to register were click here, and they were after his emails, his name and his email signature. So I'd completely missed them. I just assumed they were part of the kind of his email signature. I didn't realise that they were actually significant to the email.
There shouldn't be anything after your email signature that's important.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it was quite a densely written email, so it was really interesting, and I was interested and I wanted to help it. It was something that I wanted to do, but I completely missed the calls to action because also on my mobile screen they were beyond the fold.
Yeah.
And I think so it would have also helped, not only if they hadn't just said click here, but also if it said register. There was an online option if you couldn't make it in person, and there was an in-person one, and you couldn't tell which one was which just by looking at the links. And if they'd been in the body of the email and there was a clear sentence in front of it and it had been divided up into bullets and headings rather than big chunks of text, that also helps with readability.
White space is your friend.
Exactly.
Yeah. And also knowing what links do is reassuring. I know people who are very cautious about clicking links in emails, whereas if it says, click here to register and it goes to a registration page, that's what you expected. And also for some people who are neurospicy as well, knowing exactly what's going to happen is really helpful. Whereas, as you said, a default button that's like link.
And I think my least favourite one of these is when there's a link that says contact us. And when you click contact us, it tries to open up your email client.
Oh, I hate that.
How many times
to try and ring someone?
Yeah. So if there's an email address that you want people to send something to, spelling out the email address, So you know that so that it's available either to put into, you could click it and send an email, or you could copy and paste it. I know there's some people are concerned maybe if you put an active email address on a web page that the email address would get spammed. But I think you can, on my own website, I spell it out, but I don't have it as a clickable link. So I think that's a way around it.
You can also
if
add
it exists,
anti-spam as well, which helps. I mean,
exactly.
on my main website, I've got anti-spam. I don't really get any spam. Not that doesn't get straight shoved in spam. The 3Spoonies website does not have its anti-spam fully set up. We do get the odd bit. Mostly, can we help your YouTube channel? So go away.
Oh,
Yeah. I think something else, thinking about common things that people might not do correctly. If you've got a picture from somebody, I've sometimes seen the alt text field used as the kind of the photographer attribution. And that's not where that should be. That should be in a caption that's visible to everybody. Alt text is something that some people end up using it. They try and use it to stuff SEO keywords in there as well. And I don't think that's actually got much, I don't think that has much weighting now in most search results. And again, it's a suboptimal experience for people that are actually reading that text.
Yeah, it should be on where you've actually uploaded the image. If it's on a website, in your description there, not in your alt text.
Yeah, exactly.
Also seems a bit snidey. It's like, we'll credit you, but not in a place most people look.
Yeah,
exactly.
And yeah, if I'm got that instead of an image and I know the name of the photographer, say, it's like, that's nice.
Yeah. I think something we were talking about just before we started recording as well is making sure you've got transcripts available for your videos. Have you got, so if you're using YouTube, have you got your captions? Have you edited the auto-generated captions to make sure that things are what you're expecting them to say? Whether you're using YouTube or Microsoft Teams records, you can record transcripts on that as well. And these are all editable. AI is getting better at this. It is certainly not good at accents.
No, it's really not.
And not all tools are equal either. I've heard really good things, actually. I've not tried it myself, but if you're looking at trying to get help for alt text for pictures, Sprout Social, it's a paid tool, but I've seen some really positive reviews on how it's actually quite good at guessing the context of images as well. Because that's something else, if you've used Google Images over the last few years, if you search for different keywords in your image file, you can find images. Like, I like to look for pictures of hats, because if I'm wearing a hat, it was probably a good day. It was probably a party or something. And so you can go searching in your images for it. Google's quite good at guessing what's in an image, but it's not necessarily what you want to show in that image. So it might give you a description of it, but it won't give you the description that you want it to be. So again, it's that giving you a starting point, but not necessarily something that you just want to accept as is.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's sort of a practice and confidence thing as well, because you've certainly said things that I'd not considered before, and it's like, oh, okay, I can implement that now. And I think that's the thing, you often can't realistically go back and change everything you've done in the past, but you can improve from now on, because there'll always be something you've not considered, or someone will say, have you thought of this? And you think, oh, no, actually, no, I hadn't at all.
And I think that's so important to remember as well. Nothing is ever going to be perfect. Different people have different needs, and what works better for one person might actually be worse for somebody else. And I think it's progress rather than perfection, but trying to make your content accessible to as many people as possible, and knowing that you've got the intent there. It's not that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It's let's actually intentionally make this better.
Yeah, and also seeking feedback can be a wonderful thing. Even if someone is maybe slightly more abrasive than they could have been, if it's something that genuinely you hadn't thought of, it's like, why haven't you done this? And you think, oh, I didn't know it's a thing. Okay. But yeah, like you said, sometimes it's difficult if you've got two people who want exactly the opposite thing to help them. Like if someone wants higher contrast and someone's like, no, that's really aggressive. I don't like that at all. That's tricky. Where do you stand on people being able to use things like their own default fonts and colours and things on websites?
I think if stuff is designed where, if it's simple content, as in if you're using the heading structures, so you're not trying to use bold and resizing information, but you're using like the first H1, the heading one is the largest text, and then each one is smaller. If you're designing web pages so that they can be adapted by people's assistive technology, I think is the ideal. Not all technology applies things in the same way, but you know, people can turn on dark mode, and when you're sending an email, a lot of email marketing tools now have a test this out in dark mode. And you know, lots of people use that to help save their vision. And the number of times I've had emails that are unreadable in dark mode because people have chosen a really odd selection of colours, or they've put the background colouring in, and when the font flips it because of dark mode, it just doesn't, you know, it's unreadable unless you open it in the browser.
Yeah, and one thing I'd not considered is our local bus app gives you a QR code for the bus ticket for the day. But if you're in dark mode, it flips the white and black squares. So it's wrong.
Amazing.
But I couldn't work out why it wouldn't work. And then someone went, oh, is it in dark mode? It flips. And I sort of went, oh, yeah. So I think there can be times when it unexpected things that you couldn't necessarily have planned for like that. But on the other hand, I've had it when I've gone to a website and I've gone, oh, that's nice, they use the dyslexic friendly font, and then I've gone, no, that's because that's my default font and it's changed it. And I'd forgotten about that. But yeah, sometimes it works well, sometimes.
Oh, you just reminded me of something else. So I've noticed a bit of a trend, and it doesn't help that platforms like LinkedIn don't have a proper rich text editor for their posts. But using that weird Unicode font to try and be more eye-catching is unreadable to someone with a screen reader. It reads it as complete garbage. And it's harder to read for people who aren't using a screen reader too. So don't use the weird Unicode fonts, and also use emojis sparingly. Each emoji has its own word that's read out with a screen reader. So rather than using emoji as bullets, it's better to just use a dash or a hyphen. If you have a username on a platform and you've got a load of emojis after your name, the screen reader will read out every emoji every time. So it can become exhausting so using emojis sparingly, not using emojis in place of words. I know there were a couple of quite high profile accounts a few years ago that were using sort of flag emojis instead of the words, and they're also, flag emojis are tiny and also imply that you know what flag it is,
including if you're the one using it.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's Liberia, not the USA.
Exactly. So yeah, putting emojis at the end, using them sparingly and not using them as bullets is something that I'd also recommend.
On hashtags as well, when people will put hashtags in the middle of a sentence, that's awful on a screen reader, because if you've not capitalized any of the words, it will read out the individual letters.
It's just awful in real life.
It's awful anyway. It looks terrible.
Yeah, like I hate it when people do that. Like if you're gonna do a hashtag, save it for the end. Don't do it in the middle.
Yeah, it makes my eyes go a bit. You know, if it's blue and you know if there's like a link and then there's hashtags all over it, if I just see a load of blue, I kind of go, yeah.
Run away. Oh.
Yeah. Hashtags, know your place.
At the end.
At the end, and that is all.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that kind of wraps us up on this episode. So before I do the outro, would you have anything that you'd like to offer or plug to our listeners/viewers?
Yes. So I've been, over the last few years, so I'm not an accessibility expert myself. It's just something I've been learning a lot about. And it's something that, particularly when I was doing some the user-centered content design roles, I started collecting a bunch of resources. So on my website, I've got a list of the accessibility resources that I use. And also I'm in the middle of writing a book with my co-author, Matisse Hamon-Elise, which is available for pre-order now and is currently due to be published towards the end of 2025. But it's available for pre-order. So please, if you're interested in this and would like to read many words on it, we are writing a book.
Love that. We'll put the link in the show notes for people as well, so they can go and have a little look and get them.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for joining us, 3Spoonies, on this episode on accessible communication. We would love to know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for our weekly podcast and leave us a review. You can find us on social media, and we would love it if you would join us in the Business Success Network for Disabled Entrepreneurs Facebook group. And if you like what we do, you can also buy us a coffee. All of the links from today will be in the show notes. We will see you next week in Community Questions. Have a great day and keep track of your spoons.